What's going on, guys? Yash Talalakar back again with another episode of. Sorry, give me one sec. What's going on, guys? Yash Talalakar back again with another episode on the Whitting Brown podcast. Today, we are here with a special guest, a former classmate of mine in public speaking, as well as kinesiology 1600 this past year in Louisiana State University. We're talking about a man who who won all district honors all 4 years in in Cypher High School in Cypress, Texas, um, in the Houston metropolitan area. A man who played pretty much every position on offense, with the exception of offensive line. We're talking receiver, tight end, running back, fullback, halfback, quarterback. Call him the modern day version of Dutch Clark. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my good friend Christian Turner, aka KT. How are you doing today, KT?
What's going on, man? I'm doing great. Lovely to have you here. Lovely to have me here. I'm just here to be, one of those guys that could give you a little bit of updated knowledge on the game of the ball. That's all.
Absolutely, man. And we're all here for that at the Winning Browns podcast today. We're going to start off by talking about just kind of the experience you had growing up playing football. Obviously, I know that it's been a big part of your life, as well as football is a big part of life just in general in the state of Texas. I know
Mhm.
in Texas, you guys have a little bit different culture when it comes to football than we do here in California. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in today's episode, as well as just overall the evolution of the game as far as some of the positions you've played, including especially tight end. And then at the end of this episode, we will have a little bit of fun ranking all 32 starting tight ends in the NFL. But let's start off, KT, with just kind of discussing like when did you start football and what was your first overall memory involving playing football?
I could say my first official time ever playing football was 4 years old. I just moved to Houston from New Orleans because all the damage and everything. My people wanted a fresh start.
Right.
So we moved from New Orleans to Houston. The closest YMCA had spring football tryouts. And I told my parents I didn't want to do it. So they signed me up for soccer, right?
Right.
Fall came. I'm loving soccer. I want to play soccer again. They didn't have soccer for the fall. They only had football and t-ball, I think. And I thought t-ball was boring. I was like, I just told my parents put me in football. From there, I felt that spark. Been playing outside football, like for travel teams, AAU, Taifa. That's like a Texas organization that a good bit of people from Houston or the Texas area know of.
Hmm.
And from there, went up to middle school, took it more serious, but didn't really know what I was doing because I was still venturing around the offensive side, defensive side, trying to figure out my fit. Then once I got to high school, that was when it was made clear to me that I was meant to be on offense because the way my high school did things was we had an offensive specific day, and if you weren't good at it, you got sent to defense, and that's like
Right, right,
that's
right.
on
The same
defense.
thing happened over here. Yeah.
Yeah. So when they told me or told all the defense kids to go or to switch over to defense, I tried to switch. They told me to stay on offense, and from there, I haven't been on the defense defensive side of the ball since. So
What
that's
was the
pretty much
first
all I can remember.
position?
My first ever position that I played on offense was fullback.
Fullback. Hmm.
When I was smaller, I was chunkier, more of like the bigger kid. I was really just a blocker, like the six man on the line almost.
Right, right, right. And when you got before you got into high school, I'd imagine you played football commonly, but you had talked to me about how football became a more passionate interest of yours once you hit high school. When you got to football, was there like a specific moment where you were like, okay, this is something I really want to commit serious time to? And what was that, and how did that kind of change your life overall?
I can say sophomore year during spring ball. That's after the 20 or the sophomore season. That's
Hmm.
when everybody comes together. We all practice against each other. We're playing against the older kids, varsity, JV, freshmen. Everybody's getting their time to play against each other, show what you're worth and what you have to bring to the table for the upcoming year to try and like solidify yourself.
Right.
Once spring ball starts in Houston, that's when a lot of college coaches come out to come scout, give kids offers, give them camp invites, just to give them looks to see if they're, I guess, good enough to come. play at their school or not. And after a practice, I'm loading my stuff back in my locker. Everybody's winding down, going home. Rides are picking up. I step outside to walk because I stayed from my high school.
Right.
My coach pulls me into the office and says, "Someone wants to talk to you." It was a college coach. It was a D2 school called Colorado School of Mines. They're D2 and they win their conference in D2 every year. And they win D2 almost what? For the past 10 years, they won like 8 years straight.
Damn.
They put me out
Wow.
the office, talked to me. They said they liked what they seen on film, stuff like that. And that if I continue to progress and put more good stuff up on the board, then they'll eventually throw me an offer. After going home, hearing those words, just playing it on repeat in my head, I was just thinking to myself that I could really make a living from this if I try harder than what I've been trying before.
Right. And at that point, when you started, when you felt at that point that, football was something definitely you wanted to commit more serious time to, um, was there any changes to your overall lifestyle? How did that like affect your school and kind of like, um, the next 2 years, what was kind of like the overall plan that you had? I know you had talked about you had pretty much planned on going D1. You had gotten a couple offers even at the D1 level. So what did the next couple years look like as you were kind of preparing for college?
So in my sophomore year, I haven't. I was just living with my dad. I have been living with both my parents since my mom moved to Louisiana to start taking care of family.
Hmm.
And then spring ball is when my dad left to Louisiana to go be with my mom also. So I was in Texas stranded until my coach, he was our offensive coordinator. He heard my situation. And for the upcoming season, I was supposed to be playing a big part in the offense. And for me to leave that pretty much diminished everything that I had tried built up for the upcoming season. He said he could keep me. Mind you, in our offense, I was playing more of a flex position. I was
Right,
standing at about 6'1", 158 playing flex. That's kind of crazy if you ask
right,
me.
absolutely, yeah.
But trust me, gaining weight was no problem. I was a hard gainer at the time, but living
Uh-huh.
with him, no problem. I gained about 40 pounds in 8 months
Damn.
of
Bro,
lean carb.
you got to
Yeah,
tell me whatever bulking plan you're on because I'm trying to gain weight here and I'm having a hard time, man. But
junk food and working out 4 to 5 times a day. That's what he had me on. He said I could eat whatever as long as I work it out of my system. I
right,
said, all
right,
right.
absolutely.
And from there, I had a kind of productive junior year. I could see myself getting bigger, but at the same time, I felt I was still a little bit too small because I was going against edge rushers, bigger linebackers.
Right.
Shoot, in my high school career, I went against Harold Perkins.
Oh, damn. What was
Yeah,
that like?
he gave our school 70 by himself.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
I mean, that's not surprising looking at what he's done at LSU recently. Obviously, we know about the freshman year where he just had I think it was against Ole Miss. He had just a ridiculous game. I'll put
mm-hmm.
up the stats while we're talking, but I mean, it was something just incredibly abnormal. Um, Hold on, let's see if I can find it. Yeah, so I mean, Harold Perkins, he had during the 2023 season, he had 9 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, and a sack, and 2 quarterback hurries, as well as 2 interceptions. I mean, just ridiculous numbers. Um, and we're talking about a guy who was a freshman at the time, so I'm very much not surprised that he did what he did against you guys.
Yeah, it was pretty memorable being that I got to play against the number one linebacker in the nation. But at the same time, we got beat by 70 points.
Yeah, that's true.
It was pretty cool in my opinion, but something to really remember and build off of.
So you have talked also in the past about like you have developed an affinity for the tight end position as far as your playing and overall just kind of what you want to do in the future involving football. When did that connection to the tight end position really start for you?
Really, when I came to the realization that that was the only position my school was going to let me play, and if I
Hmm.
have to try and play anything else, battle against another guy during my senior season, and if they're favoring another person over me, that things might not go as well. So it was either switch positions and leave school or stay there and start for my
Right,
final
right.
football. I was already what about 205. I'm 6'2" and a half, almost touching 6'3". I was like, I might as well just make it work. This is my calling, it felt like. And from there, I pretty much took off. They've been keeping me in the weight room. I got bigger since my junior year. Um, I've been in film study because our I lived with our offensive coordinator. There's not a day I didn't watch film, not a day I
Right.
didn't lift, not a day I didn't run routes with our quarterback. I was just on everything heavily trying to prepare myself to put me in the best position to play tight end for my school and
Right.
eventually to the next level if I had the shot.
Definitely. And I mean, I'm sure like definitely living with the offensive coordinator definitely helped as far as just overall kind of discipline. When you got to your senior year, because I know you talked about you had gotten a couple D1 offers. First off, I want to ask, where were the D1 offers that you got?
I had a D1 offer from Grambling. My offense, that was like a put on offer, if I'm being
Right.
honest. My offensive coordinator was good friends with the receiver coach up in Grambling, Ruston,
Hmm.
in the area. And he said he liked my film, that I could move, that I'm like an option player because I'm able to be moved around the offense and not just stick at tight end or flex. Like I'm able to play outside, inside. I could play halfback if I wanted to, flex, tight end. I could do it all, right?
Right.
But they didn't have a good season, and their coaching staff got completely fired. And
Right.
the new coaching staff didn't know who I was, my name, my play, none of that. So all that went down the drain when I tried to commit. And then the other school was the Air Force.
Air Force. Oh, damn.
Yeah.
They have
I
developed a couple of really decent tight ends over the last decade or so that, I remember there was one guy think when I was in fifth or sixth grade, he put up over 1,000 yards that year. I'll see if I can remember who it was, but yeah, that's a really good offer.
mm,
Um, Go ahead. You were gonna say something, Katie?
oh no, I was just breathing. My bad. My bad.
Oh, you're good. Well, I mean, I was gonna ask on that. You have talked about with those kind of two offers not going your way, afterwards, kind of changing your path, kind of your outlook on what you wanted to do with football in the near time. I mean, do you want to talk about like what your plan is as far as you wanted to become a coach down the line and that type of stuff?
Oh yeah, 100%. So being that I know my time with football is up pretty much, I want to give back to the kids who pretty much didn't have the same opportunity that I had. I
Hmm.
felt that I was overlooked because they really didn't start caring about me. Or like I want to talk about my school slash coaching staff. Like we were cool and all. They didn't like have any resentment towards me, but like I said, I was a really small, skinny kid trying to play receiver, and they wanted me at tight end, and I didn't fit that part until they started to realize that I was what they had left for the next 2 years, and they needed to make me into the player that they needed.
Right, right,
I felt like if they would have stayed on that track when I was like a freshman, something like that, some things could have been different, but it is what it is. So, being that I took it upon myself to want to be a coach to, like I said, give back to the kids who didn't have the opportunity that I had. I feel like over the time of me playing football, this position, other positions that I have a good bit of knowledge that I'm able to spread to other kids. I'm able to bring kids up. Feel like I am a leader. I could make kids win. I could coach kids over a loss, everything of that.
right.
And from there, I just really want to primarily graduate from college with my master's in everything that I'm going to college for. I'm going to college for sports administration. Switch from kinesiology to sports
Oh,
admin.
really?
Yeah, switched everything when we were going through finals, but I felt that that would look better on my resume as far as me going into coaching, sports leadership. Um, and when I graduate with my master's, I'll be going into the GA program. That's when college students are shadowing coaches or assisting coaches with the school's football team to
Right.
gain experience, more knowledge on other positions, even other sides of the ball, knowing how to break down coverages, look at defenses and know what's their weak point, what's their weaknesses, who's the weak guy that they could pick on. and vice versa if I was to even coach defense, you know?
Right, absolutely. And well, I mean, my next question afterwards was, I mean, I didn't expect this, but yeah, I was gonna ask you, why did you end up going into college? You decided that you wanted to be a kinesiology major. Now you obviously said like you changed it into a sports administration major. But what was the original plan as far as why you wanted to be a kinesiology major? Obviously, you talk about how the sports admin major can kind of help contribute to your desire to give back to the community and be able to coach at the next level in Texas football. But what was the original approach per se that you had going to college involving why you wanted to use kinesiology for that?
If I'm being honest, I didn't really find my calling for coaching until it got to about December of last year. I went into
Hmm.
college just telling myself I wanted to major in some kind of science, and kinesiology was just the main thing that most football players majored in.
Right.
I didn't know what I wanted to do with it really. I just knew that was something that I wanted to do for the time being until I really found my purpose. And I feel like I found it after I switched to sports admin, knowing that on a coaching resume, you want to see sports leadership with a concentration instead of like a concentration in something else. You know what I
Right, absolutely. Well, I mean, on that topic, was there a specific moment or specific event that happened for you that kind of led you to believe that, coaching was your calling card?
mean? Probably when this was what, Thanksgiving, went back to Houston. Every time I go
Hmm.
back to my alma mater, my high school, my coach says I'm allowed to use their weight room, so I don't have to like spend money on a day pass. So every
Right,
time I
right.
go back, I go lift at the school. He was talking to me saying that I could, or he sees me as a coach, and everything that he's done for our school, he's flipped the 0-10 program, 1-9 program to an 8-3 playoff appearance team in the span of 2.5 years. I'm a witness to it. I was one and
Right.
nine, 1-9, then all of a sudden we're in playoffs, making playoff appearances, stuff like that. And hearing those words come from his mouth really meant a lot because in my eyes, he's like a Houston legend. He's went from school to school and flipped things around for him, making them look better, and they're still running well even after he's left. So coming from him, that really meant a lot. And I was thinking to myself that I could really make something from it if it came from him.
Hmm. I want to transition into talking about, I mean, you've talked a lot in the last few minutes about just kind of the culture of Texas as far as what you want to be able to contribute as a coach. Um, obviously I'm very much aware of this in spite of the fact that most of my life I grew up here in California.
Mhm.
That Texas is probably the hotbed when in the United States when it comes to football culture. They got a completely obsessive nature when it comes to the sport of football and just everything in that entire state is really just about football Friday night, high school football. Then you're talking college football with games like the Red River Showdown at the
Mhm.
Cotton Bowl, and then even with the Dallas Cowboys, as much as me being a 49ers fan, as you could see, we love to hate the Dallas Cowboys on this channel. Ask my podcast partner that. But yeah, I mean, at the same time, the Dallas Cowboys and their popularity kind of shows how football is such an obsessive nature, even at the pro level. What are the specific like reasons, or what to you really stands out, or is something that is why I guess Texas football, is as big as it is.
I mean, it's simply the fact that they take a lot of pride in it. That's one of the main things that I could say Houston, even the Texas area, just puts most of their financials and their money towards. You go around, you could take a like lap block around any school in Houston, any school in Austin, Dallas.
Right.
You'll see a football stadium the size of like three hospitals.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, Texas schools are big, man.
yeah. My graduating class was what, like 800 plus kids.
Jeez,
So
damn.
yeah, so they really take into account that a lot of people are in the state, a lot of people love football, and they could really make a living from it. So from there, I really just feel that they went all out. Like our football stadium for my school district costs over what? $3 million just to make. That's just the
Damn.
stadium
Ooh.
itself. Yeah. And another thing, kids in Texas are being bred to play football. Like kids aren't even like they're not even having the chance to have a real childhood. Their parents are making them so they could become stars later on in the future. That's what it's become, sadly. But I guess it's being a good thing because most kids are being successful from it and making the names for themselves now.
I mean, hey, I mean, with the amount of success you guys have had when it comes to the sport of football, I would not be mad. I mean, you look at some of the greatest high school football players of all time, they have come from Texas. I think of a guy like Kyler Murray, who when I was in elementary school, I barely followed high school football, but I knew his name very well. It just goes to show you Texas quarterbacks, as much as quarterbacks generally are treated like the superstar of any football level. Just goes to show you, even in Texas, they're hyped up pretty much like an NFL star. And the same thing goes with any position and just how much pressure and I guess how much overall investment there is to the sport of football in Texas. The next question I was going to ask on that same level was just what does the preparation look like for you as a football athlete in Texas? How is coaching very much um, implied in what you guys do?
Everything. Coaching is implied in everything. There's not a moment of being a Texas high school football athlete, as far as like outside of football, that you're not being coached. You'll be in the cafeteria getting coached.
Oh,
You'll get
really?
pulled out of class just to get coached. Stuff like that. It's not a
Damn.
yeah, it's not a dull moment there where you're not away from your coach. I'd say more than 3 minutes. You'll see them around the corner. They'll be monitoring hallways. Even if they see you, they'll just update you on a play, stuff like that.
Right. The other question I'd have, go ahead.
No, I was really just thinking because it is that crazy. Like
Right, yeah.
they're around you 24/7. Even
Damn.
on weekends, you still got to come up to the schools to watch film, deal with them lifts on Sundays. I'm still living with the dude, so it's I got to be in his face. He has to talk to me about what the upcoming week looks like and how it's gonna roll, stuff like that.
Right. I mean, from what I've talked to with several players, several athletes from Texas who play football. I mean, Texas football and the investment overall that they have in the sport is very similar to how they kind of look at like grades for I'm Indian.
Mm.
The stereotype for us is just like we have parents who are very much, obsessive in their nature to pound it in us. You got to get straight A's, got to get straight A's in that sense. Um, and especially culturally in the Silicon Valley, that is definitely the case with how many different suburbs the competitive level of academics is. And from that same angle, I mean, um, I know football is kind of looked in that same light in Texas.
Mm.
Um, the other question I had involving that is, were there any differences you'd say in like Houston football and how football in Houston was looked at versus like places you play elsewhere, such as like maybe in the Dallas metropolitan area or Fort Wayne or something like that?
Oh man, Houston is like one of I'd want to say three spots. Top three spots in Texas overall is Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio. I want to say for football.
San Antonio, really?
Yeah, they run like it's not a lot out there, but mostly like desert and dry land. But they run football out there seriously.
Right, right.
Astonishing because you eat, sleep, and breathe football. You're at like okay. Let me give you a breakdown of what a regular high school plan looks like. So in the off season, you wake up at 4. You're at the school by 5:30. You eat team breakfast at 6. Everybody's done by 6:30. Into meeting room, team meet. That gets done at about 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock, everybody splits into offense, defense. Defense is lifting, offensive film, switch. All that'll be done by about 9:30. You're on the field for walkthrough, back inside for more film, back in the cafeteria for lunch, back outside on the field after everybody takes a little minute to digest their food in full pads to actually practice for 2 hours in Texas heat.
Yeah, Texas heat is rough.
Man, if it's not touching 105, we're still staying on that field.
Damn. I think
Yeah,
for us the limit was like 90 degrees, so I can only imagine.
I wish. After that, you're back inside to watch more film, go over new plays that's going to be installed the next day, and to do more walkthroughs. And those three as a collective would last until 6 p.m.
Jeez. So basically you're talking about like a 12-hour shift as far as just overall, school, but more on top of that football kind of it's I would look at it from the way I look at it, it's more like um football with a little dose of school rather than school with dose with football, right?
Yeah, we were athlete students instead of student athletes. It was
Right.
a lot going on that we had to take in but maintain at the same time.
So how is a student and an athlete, were you able to kind of balance overall schoolwork?
Man, it sucked. It was a lot of long, 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 long nights. Be
Hmm.
on the bed at 4 in the morning, having to wake back up at 5 because I had to drive to school, go through a whole day of school, practice, come back to the house and repeat the same thing, just going through all 7 of my classes that I had worked for.
Right.
Pretty much had to make that stretch from August to the end of November when the season's finally over. Then I got to enjoy the regular student lifestyle for about a week. Then after
Ooh.
you're back into off season track, lifting, everything.
Did you play any other sports other than football when you were in high school?
I ran track. I
You ran
did
track?
the 100 hurdles, 300 hurdles, long jump, high jump, and the open 400 once in a while if my track coach felt like putting me in it.
Yeah, I mean 400, I'll say this. I don't know if you'll relate to this, but I hated running a 400. Those things are like hell. Um, but I mean, how did track for you kind of help you as a football athlete?
Oh, it translates 100%. Like, I'm pretty sure this is school wide. If you're an athlete or a football player in specific, and it's the off season, you're running track. There's not a
Right,
track
yeah.
football player that doesn't run track in the off season, and it translates because Texas has speed. Like running 10-2 in Texas will get you eighth place in a regular track meet.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I could definitely say I can definitely vouch for that. I mean, we had I think probably five athletes who ran sprints with us. Most of them, for some reason, I don't know why, but they either um, run like longer distance runs, probably like an 800 or 1600, or they just not run at all because I don't think they were required for every track athlete. But we had five specifically who were like some of the fastest athletes I've ever seen. These were guys who were, putting up, 11, low 11, high 10 second 100 meters. We're talking about sub 20 second 200s, and the impressive part about it for me was just the fact that they were able to do this so being, above 200, 210 pounds. I mean, most of the rest of the track team was, 170 and under. So the fact that they could do that at 200 pounds, I mean, football athletes in general that way are built different.
Yeah, they're built to take more impact so their body could withstand a lot more damage than what a regular person can take on because you are playing a 2 hour game just headbutting the man in front of you.
Right, absolutely. You're trying to move a man against his will, so
Yeah.
yeah, puts a lot of extra will on your end. All right, so moving on, I think now we're going to talk. I want to talk a little bit with you as far as just the NFL and kind of your thoughts on um, your thoughts on the game as it is right now and several of the different positions you've played. Obviously, you have talked a lot about kind of your investment in the position of tight end. Overall, throughout history, I mean, the tight end position, in my opinion, has one of the better evolutions. I mean, we're talking about a position that, in the 40s and the 50s was basically just an extra sixth blocker. And
Mm,
now we're talking about a guy like Travis Kelce, who's basically a slot receiver, or guys who pretty much line up as outside receivers. What for you as a tight end, a former tight end? What do you think is the most exciting part about the future of the tight end position, and what do you think was the most exciting part of how the tight end positions evolved as you've seen it?
how I've seen it evolve, there's a lot less blocking. Even in the NFL. That's what I'm
Right.
most excited about seeing. There's more receiving. you're not really watching football just to have three guys running around the field and the extra fourth be on the line for extra protection. I feel like it's evolved more because the game is more than just running the ball now. To beat teams, you have to be able to run and throw. If you're just good at one, that's pretty much like a one trick pony. The team's going to know how to stop you, shut you down from there. So for a team to pass the ball, especially to a tight end, means a lot because they evolve from being just a blocker to the second receiver, third receiver, right?
Right.
Spread sets because that's what teams run majority now. Tight ends aren't even in a 3 point stance with their hand and they're split out in the slot or even out wide if you feel that confident in your matchup with the guy who's guarding him. And it just brings a smile to my face because I could say I lived through that kind of history because,
Hmm.
like I said, head coach change and everything. I ran pretty much every formation of offense. Freshman year, wing tee, senior year, we ended in spread. I could say it was like evolutionary change for me because over the years and over the changes of our offense and how different formations came about, I got more and more love. When I say more and more love, you get the ball. If you don't block, you don't play. And I
Right.
was
Yeah.
blocking. So they started to feed me more, and I saw what it was like to be other than just the six man on the line.
Absolutely. I think one thing that I've noticed as, a viewer of the NFL, especially with the previous draft, which I had talked about in length on the channel, um, I think with this specific draft class, we're seeing an overall diversification of what the tight end position can be. I mean, we're talking about a guy like Tyler Warren, who came from Penn State, and this is a guy who played pretty much all five positions on the offensive line. He played snaps as a quarterback, a running back, a halfback, which, in the past was pretty much a dead position in the NFL. See it more in the college games, and the fullback, which is slowly a dying. Um, Position, which I think with a guy like Tyler Warren can kind of be rejuvenated as a position. And then you see him on different types of formations, whether that's the spread or the overall I formation, and how he can kind of move and manipulate an opposing defense, being able to play in motion or being able to play in the slot or as an X or Z receiver. He can run so many different routes. And I think from that standpoint, the tight end position is definitely changing into more of a Swiss Army knife. Um, but that does bring me to the question. I think tight ends in general, especially for what they value. I mean, I look at some of the last few teams to win a Super Bowl pretty much since the 1990s. Um, every dynasty or every elite team has had some sort of tight end that either is very valuable to their team, even if it's like a Ben Watson for the Patriots, or it's an elite tight end, whether that's the Gronks or the Travis Kelce's of the world. Um, and yet still somehow they are very much underpaid for what the value that they bring. Um, do you think that that could change with the overall kind of versatility that the tight ends are going to bring in the future, or do you think that's going to stay the same given the fact that there are still more Swiss Army knives?
I feel that yes, it will bring way more versatility, and I feel like if we're talking about pay, they should be paid more.
Hmm.
One because you're playing a skill slash like a mid skill slash skill position, but you also have to know run scheme, run block. You're a lineman that catches the ball. You have to do more than the average receiver than the average lineman. That's why I see it as you're the second quarterback because you also have to know your assignment, the man next to you's assignment, how everything's supposed to move in order for actual play to function and come together for the team to succeed.
Right,
And if that one thing goes wrong, or in our offense, I was held accountable because I was like our quarterback's second pair of eyes. So if something was wrong, I had to jump on it, get it right, fix
right.
it. Everything else could look right.
Um,
That's the
go ahead.
same for what the next level.
Yeah, yeah, you were saying, sorry, I might have cut you off.
Oh, what? I'm sorry.
Did you, you were saying something else. I might have cut you off.
Yeah, as far as the next level, because it's more intricate. In high school, they teach us like the basics. You get into college, that's a whole nother game, whole nother pace, whole nother tempo. You're going against bigger guys who are bigger than the average high schooler. And even in the NFL, it's bigger guys,
Right.
weight programs, lifting more, moving faster. it's just a game of tempo, and you have to know how to move in it. And with tight end, I feel like it is hard, but if you're built for it, you can do it.
I'm asking you this LSU alum to LSU alum. Um, Obviously, we had one of the better tight ends in college football this past year in Mason Taylor. Um, I guess this is triple part question, but um, was there anything that you took off of Mason Taylor's game when you were playing tight end or even now? What was your overall opinion on him? And then I guess also, what is your forecast of what he might look like as far as a scheme now at the next level? Now that he's playing with the New York Jets.
Man, Mason Taylor is, in my eyes, a very good tight end because he's one physical at the point of attack. He was not afraid to put his face mask and the man in front of him and drive them for however long he needs them to. And he's also a passing threat. He wasn't really a first read guy that you would want the ball to go to off like pre snap. But as the QB would go through his progressions and look at each man, Taylor would always find himself to be open to get the ball and make something happen with it. So I really saw a lot of good flashes in his game, and I feel like he's going to project it a lot, especially in the Jets offense, because they just picked up Justin Fields. They have Garrett Wilson, and with those tools around him to give him more knowledge as far as in the passing game, not as much as the blocking tight end game. I feel like it's going to elevate his game because he's with some elite guys that could help him be elite himself.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're talking about a tight end who is a very fast tight end on top of that, a 4.65 tight end. We're talking about him playing in an offense that has one of the fastest, if not the fastest, quarterbacks in the league. Garrett Wilson is a very fast receiver himself, and their offensive coordinator, and their new one, is Tanner Engstrand, who came from the Detroit Lions. We obviously know how they used Sam Laporta so well. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, Mason Taylor, I looked at him when I was watching him as a guy who just pretty much was, Garrett Nussmeier, even Jaden Daniels, safety blanket. I think the big thing with him is just kind of how he adapts in the run game. Obviously, when you have a quarterback like Justin Fields that can, have a little bit of trouble given the fact that he likes to run the ball more. What do you forecast as far as overall just how he can develop as a run blocker?
How he can develop as a run blocker, in my
Or
opinion,
I'll make it even better. Since you're from a coach's standpoint, let's look at it from there. What would you do as a coach if you were Mason Taylor's coach to kind of uh, help him develop further?
I mean, really just continue to do what he's doing. Being physical, like I said, he's a really good blocker in the run game, even to be a six man on the block if they need extra protection up front in the pass game. So it's taking them out, just keeping the other three in. Um, if he just continues to keep that physicality on the NFL level, I'd say because his dad was also in the NFL, so
Right.
it's grit by grit, generation after generation. Uh, his growth area, I could say, really isn't in his blocking game. I feel like he has it down packed, if I'm being completely honest. He's a solid guy, good frame. What is he, about 6'4", 200 plus pounds, who could really move the man in front of him with no problem. If you send him at a man, I feel like it's going to get handled.
Right. And Mason Taylor, yes, he is 6'5", 251 pounds and moving 4.65 at that size.
Well, I'm lying. One thing he can improve on is,
But yeah, go ahead, KT.
like I was saying, I double back a little bit. Just a couple things I would improve is just his pad level and hand placement. When he comes off the ball, he comes off a bit too high. And at the point of contact, if you're on the line going against a defender that's dead in front of you, less than 3 inches away from you, the point of contact is, from what I was taught, face mask in the chest, or just about under where your chin strap is, and hands inside the pad placement, like you're putting your hands in their armpit. And in film that I watched on him, like close up, because I do still find passion in the game. I do still watch certain tight ends in the game. I would see him about eye to eye with his hands on like their shoulder pad, not really more inside where other opponents can be more beat easily, making it harder for himself. But he would still get the job done surprisingly. And I guess to stay elite and keep being elite how he was in college and to translate that into the NFL is just to watch tape on other guys who he thinks his game is like, just to see how they've progressed and how it paid off for them and how they've kept some things and forgot some things. I wouldn't say more forgot, but they gained more knowledge and took on more things and they let go of old habits that really wasn't doing better for them as they progressed and got better and got into higher places.
Right, right. And I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, for a guy like Mason Taylor, I think a offensive coordinator like Tanner Engstrand is perfect for him. I think as far as pad level, I remember that was one of the big concerns for even a guy like Sam Laporta when he came out of Iowa, and he turned out pretty well. So I think Mason Taylor, I mean, for me, he was my number three tight end. So I'm ex incredibly high on him and his potential. But yeah, I mean, I think that this overall Jets team excites me as far as what they can do for Mason Taylor's career. On that specific note, I would ask involving, did you follow the NFL draft? And if so, did you have like a list as far as guys you were looking at as far as tight end that you think are going to be good in the next level, maybe like a ranking?
Really, all my guys that I would watch in specific that I had put probably my most investment and time into is Tyler Warren and Elijah Arroyo.
Elijah, ooh, the guy from Miami.
hmm He had a lot of burn with Cam Ward, especially the number one quarterback in the draft. He was really good at getting open. He would also block. He's more of a slender, taller build and tight end. I wouldn't say he's more big in stature. I would want to say he's a more receiving tight end than he is a blocker, but if he has to block, he will get it done. I like him a lot because he's, in my eyes, that's just a really big receiver that could block well as a six man, down man. And for him to go out there like he's a regular receiver and run around DBs who are faster than him, quicker than him, and still get open and make plays for the offense really astonished me.
Well, I mean, as far as Elijah Roy goes, I think the big concern with him is, of course, staying healthy. But yeah, I mean, if he had played more, I would really very much be high on him. But yeah, this past year for a guy like Cam Ward, he was very much a safety blanket at times where Cam Ward was, in the middle of it, one of his good old playmaking um, rendezvous, let's call it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Elijah Arroyo is a very intriguing prospect at the next level, and I'm excited to see what he ends up doing. Um, Now for the all-time worst transition in the history of sports podcasts. On that same note, we're going to talk about. I wanted to talk about a former Miami tight end with a lot of controversy surrounding him. I think you guys know who I'm talking about. A guy who we have made a few jokes on this podcast, but Mr. Aaron Hernandez. And on that same note, we're also going to talk about Rob Gronkowski. A lot of people, including myself, would argue that this is the greatest tight end duo of all time, and a tight end duo that featured 2,300 yards combined back in 2011, the sole season where they were just dominating the NFL. Um, Obviously they had a huge impact on the game and how it was played as far as the way that they lined up and overall changing that in the league into more of a two tight end set and what they could do with that. Was there what would you say was the most you know uh pivotal part of their impact on the game as a specific duo when they were on the field?
As a duo, I want to say they each had their own stronghold. Aaron Hernandez was more of the receiving guy. He wasn't, in my eyes, if I was a college coach, he was not a tight end. He was just a heavier receiver standing only at like what, 6'1",
Right.
and still being able to run routes, move, get open. I saw him really as just the bigger receiver. Now Gronk, he was a really good part in this role as a blocker and in the passing game. I see him as a more developed and more complete tight end over Hernandez, just over the fact because he's bigger, weighs more, and he's built actually for the position.
Right,
Or
absolutely.
modern time, I guess back then 6'1" for tight end would slide, but in today's world, that's not cutting it.
Do you have an all-time tight end rank as far as like a top five, maybe?
Um, I have a top three.
Top three?
My top three, number one, the in my eyes, the greatest tight end of all time is Tony Gonzalez.
Hey, you're the first person that said that I agree with. Everyone else says Gronk or Kelsey.
Nah,
I've been on the record saying that Gonzalez is the number one tight end.
now I do have Kelsey at my three just because of his boom and his production. He's putting out receiver numbers. Guys
Absolutely.
who had triple crown, guys who've had multiple 1,000 yard seasons, having more yards than those guys, and still being able to block and do all the other things tight ends are capable of is really mind blowing. That's why I have him at my three, being even though he's a younger guy. And for my number two, Antonio Gates.
Antonio Gates.
Yes,
Damn. So no, you don't have Gronk in your top three.
I think Travis Kelsey's better than Gronk in my opinion.
Damn. Damn. So what specifically stands out for a guy like Kelsey that you think he's better than Gronk?
His route game,
Route running.
yes, 100%. Gronk was more of goal line. If it's short down and distance, he's more of a possession guy. He's not the guy I would want to go to for a really big game. Would he pop big games though? Yes, I'm not gonna lie. I'll give him his props. He's had times where he's broke a couple of tackles and went for longer than what he was expected to go for, but for his role in an offense, he's a down and distance possession guy. That's why I have Kelsey over him because Kelsey's more of a deep threat. He startles safeties because he's able to run on their toes, get them off edge, and really make the decision on where he's going. His route
Right.
really strikes fear in a defense because they haven't seen a tight end in the game that can actually run routes, move certain ways, make certain cuts. They wouldn't even expect the tight end to run a whip route, but he does stuff like that and still makes a good gain off it. That's why I
Right.
have him over Rob Gronkowski.
100%. I mean, I get that completely. For me, I think the big reason I would still take Gronk over Kelsey is because of the blocking game. I know Kelsey has had different criticisms on his blocking game, as far as some people saying that he's not a good blocker at all. I know for someone like Chris Collinsworth, on PFF has talked several times about how Kelsey's actually underrated as a blocking. Where do you stand on kind of what Kelsey does for the Chiefs offense as a blocker?
As a blocker, if I'm being honest, he's a little bit of a prima donna. They really don't they really don't have him involved in the block game because the game's more modernized now. They're using him as more of a receiver because hands down, he is the current best tight end in the league. So
Hmm.
if I had him in my offense, I'd pretty much do the same thing. But also, if it came down to it, I'd want him to be as sharp as Gronk would be, because Gronk, he's, I'd say, a more well rounded tight end in both passing and blocking. But if we're just talking about opinionated, I'd say Kelsey. But if he was to take on the role of blocking better, then I feel like he'd have more of an edge on Gronk if we're talking about better out of the two.
Right. On that same topic, well, a little bit moving away, I was gonna ask, what is your opinion on some of the older tight ends in the game and how they impacted the position? I'm talking about guys like, the Kellen Winslows, the Mike Ditkas of the world, even guys, if you want to go back to even like H-backs, if we're talking about the days of the Cleveland Browns or the Green Bay Packers in the 1950s and 60s. How do you think the game has evolved there, and what do you think that they have done as far as how they impacted the modern day game?
Wow. Really setting the foundation for blocking. That's really the greatest thing that I'd say older tight ends have brought to the game because as this game is progressing and even after our time as it's going to keep progressing, the kids and guys who are becoming today's faces of tight ends, they don't know what blocking is really or how to block because we're in a more modern era. Everyone's air raid offense. No one's really trying to beat a team on the floor, just pounding it run after run after run.
Right,
So being in this era, in those offensive spread air raid, like I just said, it's more of you're running routes. You're not really hands on with the five guys that are really in the trenches, snap for snap, like digging and eating with those guys
Hmm.
and really in that dirt and getting grimy. They're more of out the way and pity pat with the smaller guys, making them more soft, like not as agile, and really just softening them up. If I'm
Right,
being
absolutely. Um, on top of that, I wanted to ask about your teams. I know you are a Houston Texans slash New Orleans Saints fan, growing up in both cities. Obviously, the New Orleans Saints don't look like they're going to have a great year. Derek Carr recently retired, and they don't particularly have the greatest tight end in the world, but Juwan Johnson has had his moments. When it comes to the Houston Texans, I don't remember. Do they still have Dalton Schultz? I know that
I
they have
believe
another
so.
I know they have another tight end, um, who, yes, they have yes, they still have Dalton Schultz, and I know they have another tight end who I'm a huge fan of. He was a very good tight end at Ohio State, and a guy who I think is going to have a bigger role for the Houston Texans as CJ Stroud and Nico Collins and the rest of that offense continue to develop in Cade Stover. What are your expectations for both your teams and their tight end spots, and just overall, even as far as what the teams look like these next few years?
Starting off, I want to start with the Saints because that's my number one.
Hmm.
Jawan Johnson. He is, I wouldn't say TE1 because he is in rotational phase with Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill is a Swiss Army knife for the
Right,
Saints.
right.
Everything, man. But he is good. I would say great, not just yet, because he has had ins and outs with injuries, staying healthy. But as far as on the field, while he is up and active, he is a really great upside on the offense because he gives, like I said, an opening to a third or fourth man because it's a spread offense. Everyone wants to run routes, air raid, kill in the air before you can kill on the ground. That's more of a last resort. And primarily in the NFL, everybody runs 11 personnel. That's when you have what, one quarterback, one running back, three receivers, and a tight end. And he fits perfectly in it because he plays the role very well. There's not too much situation where he would be in as the bigger guy to make a really good block or to set someone up in the run game. But when he's called to do his role, he plays it well. That's mostly in the past. I do say they have another rotational player other than Taysom Hill for blocking. I forgot his name. He is on the Saints, but he's more of a bigger, stocky tight end who gets it
Hmm.
down the run. And even if in pass, he'll get it done also. But that's more in short down and distance, not even in red zone, if I'm being honest. But as far as those two, Taysom and Juwan, I have high hopes for them in the upcoming season
Are you talking
because,
about Foster Moreau?
yes, Foster Moreau. Oh my goodness, you're good with this. He's more of the bigger guy, better in blocks. He does make appearances in the pass game, but is not as present as Jawan Johnson. Now for the Texans, I honestly don't know how their tight end production is going to be, even though the tight end is one of the very key pieces in the role. The more they bring in offensive weapons, more as receivers than tight ends, it really makes me question how they're going to be utilized and what they could be utilized for. So,
That is true. I mean, although I would say that, I mean, a guy like Dalton Schultz, he strikes me, I mean, given the fact that D'Amico Ryans has worked with that Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan type system, he reminds
mm,
me that way of a lot what how the Niners use George Kittle.
mm,
In the same way, Cade Stovers is a little bit interesting to me because he's not a tight end who I look at and say, he puts out a lot of separation on tape, but he's got great hands. He's a great blocker. So I'm intrigued by what they do that way.
100%.
On the same topic, there is well, I mean, I was going to mention when you were talking about the Saints, there is one other tight end that I really like, Dallin Holker. Now, some people, when I've talked in Louisiana, think I'm crazy because I've hyped this guy up like he's the second coming of Jesus, or something like that. I actually have a friend whose sister was classmates with him. But yeah, I mean, I genuinely think that he is going to be. one of the best tight ends in the league in a few years. I think he's a little bit raw. But he was my number, if I'm not mistaken, either my number one or number two tight end in the 2024 class. Um, do you have any thoughts on Dallin Hoker or?
I feel that he's still up and coming. I
Mhm.
mean, he really didn't do a crazy bit for us when he played in his 12 games, only having like 20, 30 receiving yards. That's only off 3 receptions, though. So I guess he's made the most of what he could with the amount of targets he's had.
Right.
But I feel like his upside is still on the come up.
For sure. I agree with that. Um, moving on, I think moving on to the next segment in this episode, we're going to be talking about the best tight ends in the league. And I know KT mentioned his all-time top three tight ends this last segment, but now we're going to be talking about the best tight ends in the league right now and what they have done over the last few years. KT, we'll start off at number one. And go through 16, and if we have time, we'll go through 32. But we'll start off at number one, and we'll each rank where we have certain tight ends. But who is your number one tight end in the league?
From this past season, I feel like I'm going to get a lot of hate from this, but I'm going based off production and upside. I'm going to take the hot take and say Brock Bowers.
Whoa. Okay, so we're starting off really high here with Brock Bowers. Very understandable. This is a guy who broke pretty much every rookie tight end record in his first year. A guy who lived up to all the hype and more coming out of college, exceeded expectations. And I think, yeah, I mean, I 100% get the anticipation of what he can do in the near future. He is a generational tight end prospect. Personally, however, I'm going to go with the guy who I'm a fan of. I have a poster of this man in my bedroom, none other than George Kittle. Maybe call me a little bit biased here, but I mean, we're talking about a guy who has done exactly what he has done over the last 6, 7 years. If not for a guy named Travis Kelce, I think he would be looked at even better than he already is. But yes, he has been one of the most stable parts of the San Francisco 49ers in what has otherwise been a very disappointing year for us. But that's going to be my number one tight end. For who is your number two?
Travis Kelce. He's still the gold standard for all tight ends across the league, and every tight end in the league should aspire to be somewhat like him.
Travis Kelce. I know you talked about how much you like him as a route runner. For number two, I'm going to go with Trey McBride. Um, I think a guy who every time I watch him on film, he impresses me even more. A guy who um, he is just a phenomenal route runner. I think his footwork is very underrated as far as how he can kind of just get to a spot, dig his foot in, and just create separation right off the bat. He's got incredible frame to be able to use against smaller defensive backs and is a very, very underrated blocker, even for how good people praise him for his blocker. I don't think he gets enough praise already. I think he is even better than most people say he is. For me, he's my number two tight end in the league.
Okay.
At number three,
George Kittle, your guy. He's physical, doesn't lack a thing when it comes to run game, run blocking. He's really a really, really good upside for the 49ers, especially for Brock Bowers. Not Brock Bowers, Brock Purdy.
at number
and,
three, I'm gonna go ahead.
and he's a really good receiver threat also. But other than that, I want to hear your three.
At number three, I'm going to go with Travis Kelce. Like you said, he's the gold standard of the tight end position. At his worst, I mean, I'm going to take an Aaron Rodgers quote here, as we found out earlier this year or earlier this day, that Aaron Rodgers is signing with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Very strange move, but whatever.
Yeah.
Um, Uh, yeah, I mean, in the same way for that Aaron Rodgers said, a career down year for Travis Kelce is a career year for most tight ends. And that is exactly what happened. Travis Kelce is slowly on the downside, but he is still easily one of the best tight ends in all of football. We're talking about a guy who, for the last 6, 7 years, if we're going to go off of PFF and analytics, he never had less than an 85 PFF grade until this past year. Just ridiculous numbers. And a guy who has great chemistry with his quarterback, Patrick Mahomes. They seem to be just think differently from any other quarterback tight end duo in the league, how they can just kind of run their own routes and just be on the same page always. There's not a single tight end in the league who can do the things that Travis Kelce does in that same way. Who is your number four though?
Trey McBride,
Trey
emerging
McBride.
pass catcher with spectacular hands, in my opinion.
At number four for me, I'm gonna go with your guy, Brock Bowers, number one. Um, I think this is the only reason I don't have him higher simply because of the fact that he is a rookie. And at the end of the day, I don't like hyping up rookies more than they should be. I don't feel like, unless you're talking about a guy like, like what Gale Sayers had in the 60s, where he was, that good as a rookie, or, Devin Hester, we're talking more recently. Some guys that you just cannot compare. Usually, I'm not going to rank a rookie at any position number one, no matter how good they are. But yes, I mean, Brock Bowers, if we're talking about just what he can be next year, I very much expect him to be one of the top two, if not number one tight end in the entire league.
Okay. And then for my five, go Birds. Not playing. I have Mark Andrews.
Mark Andrews, tight end who a few years ago I would argue was as good as any tight end in the league. Um, Outperformed Travis Kelce and George Kittle to become a first team All Pro selection in 2021. But more recently, he was the laughing stock of one of the lesser memorable days of this past season for the Baltimore Ravens, that being when they lost against the Buffalo Bills. Um, for me, however, I'm going to go with a guy who I think is super, super underrated, consistently as good as he needs to be for his team. Not the number one option per se on his team because they have the best receiver in the league, in my opinion, but he has been a stable part of every organization that he has been with in the NFC North. That is going to be TJ Hawkinson, a guy who is, I would argue, as on the Mount Rushmore of best blocking tight ends in the entire NFL, and a guy who consistently gets close to 60, 70 receptions a game and has great yards per reception at that level. Does exactly what his team needs to and is great on all levels. Maybe not the best at any certain thing, but decent enough separation, great hands, exactly what every team needs, and a guy who's constantly an 80 plus PFF grade on. If we're looking at advanced analytics, always shows up in the top 10 of every metric.
Oh yeah. That's why I have him at my six. Like you said, reliable, good in routes. He's just all around solid, great TE.
For my number six, I'm gonna go with another guy from the NFC North. The NFC North has some great tight ends, let's be honest there.
I can agree.
Um, but for me, I'm gonna go at number six with Sam Laporta of the Detroit Lions. I would have him a little bit higher. I think what he's done, especially what he did as a rookie, very much make the argument that he is a top five tight end. The reason why I don't is because I want to see what he ends up doing this year without Ben Johnson as offensive coordinator. Ben Johnson was just one of those offense coordinators that makes every guy on that offense that much better. But yeah, I mean, Sam Laporta, we're talking about the numbers, had 900 yards as a rookie. And then as a sophomore, he had uh, what was it? Remind me. He had 726 yards, playing 16 of 17 games. Very much consistent as far as what he can do in the receiving game. Even better blocker in my eyes. I value blocking a lot with the tight ends, especially because of what you said about how blocking is kind of disappearing a little bit more in the game given the new types of systems. For that reason, Sam Laporta is my number six tight end.
And for my number seven, I do have Sam Porter.
Damn.
Great,
So go
great
ahead.
size, route running. He's another TJ Hawkinson in the making in my eyes. I just need to see a little bit more from him, being that he is a rookie. I know
Right.
I put a rookie at my one, but the only reason is because he's doing monumental things in just his first year and compared to Sam Laporta.
Right, definitely. I would say for my number seven, um, this one's a little bit more tricky. Um, I'm gonna go with another guy who I think is super, super underrated. I'm gonna go with Pat Fryermuth. Um, a guy who, much like TJ Hawkinson, fantastic blocker. I wouldn't go as far as saying he's a top five blocker of the tight ends in the league, but a guy who is constantly, as far as the advanced analytics, always showing up as a top 10 tight end. I think a very underrated part of the Steelers game. When you talk about a team that is as good as they are in the run game, constantly creating for his opposing offenses, and a guy who doesn't get enough credit for what he does as far as yards per reception and what he is in the red zone. A guy who this past year had a 62.8 success rate as a tight end, and a guy who has 10 yards per reception. So we're talking about a guy who is consistently looked at when needed as a safety blanket by whatever quarterback that the Steelers are throwing out there. Just someone who I think that gets underlooked for his value on a very good run blocking Steelers team.
And for my eight, I want to say this is the best tight end in the NFC South, and I may get a bit of hate for it, but Kyle Pitts.
Kyle Pitts,
Tremendous upside, but my only problem with him is that he's inconsistent. I feel that
definitely.
with the new quarterback change and the Falcons making Michael Penix their solidified starter for the upcoming season, and he is mostly their number one, if not number two, being that there's Drake London. He is a very big target and a target that they're going to go to a lot in this upcoming season.
Absolutely. I will argue from a fantasy football standpoint, Kyle Pitts is extremely frustrating. Don't ever draft him as a fantasy football. You cannot rely on him. Every time you think that he's going to be, you know, that good in fantasy football, oh my God, he frustrates the hell out of you. In real life, he frustrates the hell out of you even more because you think that some scheme that is going to be put out there is going to help him. But then again, when you have Arthur Smith, you're more likely to use Jonnu Smith than you are to use Kyle Pitts for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
It is what it is. But at number eight, I'm going to go with the guy that you ranked at number five. I'm going to go with Mark Andrews here. I still think he's one of the best tight ends. I think that he had obviously a very slow start to this past season, and the drops are a big issue. But a guy like you said, fantastic blocker, fantastic route runner, and just an overall very much a do-it-all tight end. Does exactly what need be in the Ravens system.
And for my nine, a sleeper, in my opinion, David Njoku.
I'm
Big,
glad you mentioned that name.
he's a really good big play threat, athletic. But the only thing that I can say has been holding him back from his full potential is his injuries. If he's to stay healthy, I feel that he's in the top three conversation, especially among the guys who are in the league currently.
I don't know if I'd go as far as say he'd be a top three tight end, but yes, for that same reason, I have David Njoku at nine. I think a guy who's one of the best red zone tight ends in the league. And as you mentioned, if it's not for injuries, he would be looked at a lot better than he is. I'd also say he's underlooked just because he plays for the Cleveland Browns. There's a reason why our podcast is called The Winning Browns, because the Browns lose that much and because their players get slept on. Because of that. And David Njoku is one of those types of players. A guy who, whenever he has a big game, he is the threat on the Cleveland Browns team. But yes, David Njoku, for that reason, is also my number nine tight end.
And for my 10, I have Dalton Schultz because he's a reliable target, consistent, very, very consistent in the pass game, more likely than in the block game, but he is still a solid blocker.
At number 10, I'm going to go with another tight end from the NFC North. I just seem to love the tight ends from the NFC North, but I'm going to go with Cole Kmet, a guy who I'm excited to see what he does now that he has Ben Johnson as his quarterback, as his offensive coordinator, excuse me. And a guy who I thought had a breakout last 2 years, especially a guy who surprisingly did not make the Pro Bowl, had 719 yards in 2023, and is consistently having about 11 yards per reception, as well as a 60 to 70% success rate, top with guys like George Kittle and the aforementioned Pat Fryermuth, and a fantastic blocker. So yes, for me, 6'6", 260, and uses his body very well. I'm gonna go with Cole Kmet as my number 10.
At my 11, let me make sure my list is right. Yeah, at my 11, I have Irv Smith Jr. from the Bengals.
Ooh,
Very athletic, very high upside, and a very, very good blocker. I know they didn't have the season that they projected with the quarterback that had the most passing yards, passing touchdowns, triple crown receiver, and a very solid wide receiver too in T. Higgins. But in their offense, he plays his part very well, and I feel like this upcoming season he's going to play it better than he has last season.
I did not expect Irv Smith to be this high. I'll tell you that. Um, Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't go as far as to say what you said. I wouldn't put him this high, but
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, he is definitely one of the best route runners as far as separation goes. He is definitely up there, and I can very well see an argument for him from that standpoint. For me, however, at number 11, I'm gonna go with another Dalton. That you didn't mention earlier. For me, a guy who, for the same reasons you put Irv Smith this high, I'm gonna put him this high. I'm gonna go with one of my favorite players from college football when he played in college football, and that is going to be Dalton Kincaid.
Mhm.
Pretty much for the same reasons. Um, you know, fantastic route runner, great at separation, very speedy tight end. And I don't think he gets talked enough about when you talk about the fact that that Buffalo Bills team doesn't have, a highlight receiver. So Dalton Kincaid provides them with that type of option.
Agreed. For my 12, I have a guy that you mentioned higher in your ranking, Pat Fryermuth. Steelers, reliable, very tough, and a steady receiving option for their offense.
At number 12 we are, right?
Yeah.
Yes. At number 12, I'm going to go with the guy you mentioned earlier, and that is going to be Texans tight end Dalton Schultz. Like you said, a guy who's constantly very much focused as far as what he can do in the receiving game. And a guy who is still a very decent blocker, and I'm excited to see what he does with the new Texans offensive coordinator.
For my 13, I have another surpriser. I'm going to go with Evan Ingram from the Jaguars. He's a versatile and athletic threat on offense, offers more of a unique mismatch skill when it comes to when it comes to the pass game because he is more of a blocker than a passer. If I was to compare his game to another current NFL tight end, I'd compare it to Kyle Pitts, but I feel that Kyle Pitts has more upside than Evan Ingram.
I'm also going to go with 13 with Evan Ingram for the exact same reasons you mentioned. I would put him a little higher if we're just talking about him as a receiver. I think he has helped Trevor Lawrence continue to develop into a better quarterback. Maybe not a quarterback worth 55 million, but certainly a quarterback that is in the top half of the league. But yes, he has very much a lot of problems as a blocker, and for that reason, he is at number 13 rather than in the top 10.
Mm. For my 14, a player that in my eyes is going to have a breakout season because of their receiver draft choices and their quarterback upside, Tucker Kraft, the Packers.
It looks like you and I are on thinking with the same exact mind here because I have Tucker Kraft also at uh, number 14 for those exact same reasons. Tucker Kraft is a guy who had 700 receiving yards this past year, a 400-yard jump, and I think that he is anticipated for an even bigger jump this next year, like you said.
Oh yeah,
And finally, we are going to go with our 15th tight end. Who do you have at number 15?
Jonnu Smith.
Oh no, you did not. The memes are gonna go crazy after this.
Uh, I mean, I give my flowers when they're due. He's in my eyes, he is a tight end and the tight end for the Dolphins. Versatile, athletic, and is used in a lot of multiple roles.
I'm gonna go with the guy that Arthur Smith is gonna hate me now that you mentioned Jonnu Smith, but I'm gonna go with the guy you mentioned earlier for this reason, Kyle Pitts. I
Mm,
think that, like you said, he has a lot of potential as far as what he can do with Atlanta's new offensive coordinator. Great route runner, not necessarily the greatest blocker, but reminds me that way a lot of what Vernon Davis did when he was with Jim Harbaugh. So I'm excited
mm.
to see what he ends up doing this next year with the speed and the overall talent that he has. But yeah, that is the rest. That is our list, our top 15, and I'll put them in the comments section. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. But yeah, that about wraps it up today with our interview with, again, Christian, aka KT Turner. KT, thank you so much for dropping by. We'll make sure to try to get you on the podcast down the line. Um, but thank you so much for watching today. Please remember to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Peace.
Peace.